but I'm going to cover a lot of very detailed information regarding the history of Trump. Specifically, we're going to be looking at his father, and we're going to be looking at the elementary school that he attended and his father's donations to those schools, as well as the roots of that elementary school that he went to. I think he was there about 6 or 7 years, his first 6 or 7 years. There's actually images of him at this school all the way through like the 4th or 5th grade. And here's the deal. Don't fall into the Hegelian dialect. In fact, that is what we will be talking about extensively this morning. Do not automatically hate what I'm going to present to you just because it says things that could be construed as negative about Donald Trump. This is what they want. I believe this whole thing we call America is one giant Hegelian dialect, one giant psyop, team warfare. They get you on a team or a series of teams, things that you believe in and represent. They create the opposite of that team. So there's always somebody to hate. And you end up living your life in chaos because you can't even have a dinner with family without getting into some heated debate about some topic. And that's exactly where they want us. So the history of Trump. Is he one of them? That's the burning question, isn't it? I'm going to lay out some factual history that may help us all come to some conclusions. And always remember, before I get into this, throughout history, insane people always have been charitable and seem to care about people. And if the standard for defending Trump is, what he's done during his presidency or the good things he's done to help America, then if that's the standard, then Rockefeller and Soros should be giving gold medals. And always remember that. Some of these Hollywood stars, they adopt children, they donate to things. That doesn't change the fact that some of them worship Satan. And Trump, in his own words, admits the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So we're going to look at Trump's father. And this is him. Now we're going to stick to the facts. I'm going to leave the emotion out of all this. I'm going to present to you the facts, okay? He immigrated from Bavaria, okay, where the Illuminati comes from. And this is where the same spot where he's from is where the Heinz family is from. His father, not him, immigrated to New York in 1885 from a German village in Karlstadt. When you look up Karlstadt, this is where the Heinz family is from. John Heinz Kerry, okay? The trillionaires, the ancestral home related to Heinz and Trump families. This is it here in Bavaria. Again, this is Trump's grandfather, not his father. Immigrated to the United States in the 1800s. So these are the roots of where all of this started. Now, that alone doesn't mean anything, right? This is 2 or 3 generations back. But I'm going to tie and weave a story that you are going to not believe that no one's covered this yet. Now, it says here that his name was incorrectly recorded on the passenger list. Now, here's what's interesting. If you look at this particular page, this Wikipedia page, they have removed the entire portion of the surname. This portion of the live broadcast, which is what you're looking at now, was basically muted out. So Wikipedia has updated Fred Trump's page to exclude the part about the last name being recorded as Drumpf instead of Trump. They have essentially erased history. Peterson of the Boston Globe says that based on the Blair biography, that the family changed spelling from the ancestral Drumpf. And it's easy to believe that maybe this isn't true, but even the mainstream media was saying this years ago. Drumpf, remember the story of the boy in that book. This is unbelievable. And this happened during the 30 Years' War. Now let's keep going with this. So why is Donald Trump so loyal to Israel? Well, during the 1980s, his father, Fred Trump, became friends with the future Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel ambassador to the United Nations in Manhattan. Now, the other common threads and themes that you're going to see me present this morning are going to be this link to New York and lower Manhattan. And you're going to see this going all the way back to the founding of the World Trade Center, we have to call it now. Now, this is crazy. So his dad was friends with Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay? Find that. During the 1980s, Fred Trump became friends with the future Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, there was a KKK arrest. Now, as you know, I don't buy into the left-right labels. This person's a bigot, that person's a bigot, based on their political affiliation. They're all bigots, you guys. They're all bigots. It's us against them. Now, this part of the live show was badly corrupted and interrupted, and so we're going to redo it here, in which there was a KKK arrest of Trump's father. And apparently he was charged for refusing to disperse from a parade when ordered to do so. He shared lawyers with the other men who were arrested, who were confirmed KKK. And they're saying that Trump was released after charges, this is his father, and that he was wearing the same clothes as the other men. They were all arrested wearing the same Klan attire. Now, Trump denies all this. He says, my father was never arrested and he wasn't in KKK. You have to decide for yourself what that means. Now, he did get in trouble for war profiteering. He was using the war to actually make money off of these real estate investments. And this is where Trump got some of his money to start his wealth from his father. His father was the original real estate investor. So he got in trouble for that. They called it war profiteering. He also would not rent to blacks. They sent some undercover people in, and he would not rent to blacks. Civil Rights Division, U.S. Department of Justice filed civil rights suit against Trump organization, charging with violating the Fair Housing Act. Now, this is really hard to do. Unless you just flat out don't rent to people a certain color, the Fair Housing Act, you're not going to, this isn't something that everybody gets charged with, okay? This is basically neighborhood building is what this is. These are the facts. When you exclude certain people from certain neighborhoods, you're building a neighborhood that is exclusive. And then what they do is they move everybody else, move all the black people into another neighborhood. You see how that works? And this actually helped keep everybody segregated. Okay? It says here, the suits arose after complaints to New York City Commission on Human Rights and the Urban League led the league and other groups to send black and white testers to apply for apartments. So it was like undercover sting in Trump-owned complexes, which led them to conclude that whites got apartments in the buildings of their interest, while blacks generally did not. Both advocacy organizations then raised the issue with the Justice Department. So, and we're going to get into more about why this may have happened. Now, here's where the plot thickens, because this segregation mentality that Trump's father exhibited falls right in line with this Marxist school system called the Q school systems, K-E-W, not Q the letter, but this opens up a whole new dynamic about what Q might really mean. And these Q schools, Trump's father donated an entire wing to the very grammar school that Trump attended. He was a firm believer in these Q schools, and we'll get into that later in the show. And Trump donated to the school where his son and all of his kids went, who was basically, this school was an elite school and a brainchild for the Hegelian dialect. And this is what nobody else has covered yet. And this is history. So, what kind of things did Fred Trump do? Well, they donated a lot in support of the Jewish community. They did a lot of good stuff, but this is part of it, okay? This is what these people believe, that they have to balance the good with the bad that they do. Made charitable contributions to the Long Island Jewish Hospital. Now, they lived in this area. Supported Jewish and Israeli causes and institutions, including a donation of land for the building of the Beach Haven Jewish Center in Flat. But now you know why Trump is so beholden to Zionism. Now you know why. Because his father was. Significant support for Israel bonds, debt securities that traded a risk-adjusted spread to U.S. Treasury bonds. So basically, he invested in Israel. Fred Trump also provided support to the school his children attended, the Q4 school, where he served on the board of directors. So he served on the board of directors at this Marxist school, which we're going to get into detail about that. And he donated money to them so they could build a wing. He died 88 days after the 88th day of the year. That's when his father died, on June 25th, the same day that Michael Jackson died. Not the same year, but the same day. And his wife died at 88 years old. Now, let's keep going with this, because there's much more to this. This is crazy, you guys. So, Donald Trump attended this Q Forest Elementary School, which is a Skull and Bones John Dewey School. Now, I'm going to show you what this school is all about in very high detail, okay? Q Forest opened in 1918 as American from scholastic rigor and toward child-centered approach advocated by psychologists John Dewey and G. Stanley Hall, and I'm going to show you how these two are linked to Skull and Bones and the Illuminati. Dewey and Hall believed that teachers should adjust the pace and content of their lessons to the students rather than simply demanding that they keep up. Here's a problem. I'm going to show you what Dewey's really all about. They're sugarcoating it right here. Q Forest became a training center for the children of the elite. Q Forest became a training center for the children of the elite on the North Shore of Queens County, where wedding announcements often noted which brides and grooms had been educated there. A member of the board, Fred Trump, had donated materials to construct a new wing for the school, which all of his children would attend, including Donald. Now, this is interesting because this just isn't just a school that his kids went to. He believed in them and invested in this school. At Q4's, Donald Trump was a bit of a terror. He once said that he gave a teacher a black eye because I didn't think he knew anything about music. According to Trump, he was then already the person he would always be. He's telling you. I don't think people change very much, Trump would tell me. When I look at myself in the first grade and I look at myself now, I'm basically the same. Temperament is not that different. His sister would describe him as extremely rebellious in his youth. A classmate recalled Donald as a boy who tested the rules and the teachers to their limits. He had an ornery disposition. Who is this John Dewey character? Well, we still have not been able to link him to Tom Dewey. Tom Dewey was the governor of New York. Remember, there's a strange connection with all this New York stuff. He's the governor of New York who established the World Trade Center to develop a World Trade Center corporation, they called it, in the official legislation, in the bill. You can look all this up. Everything I'm saying to you this morning, you can look up. None of this is made up or conjecture. You have to decide what it all means. And they're telling you, they're not hiding the truth. It's there. What it took to this minute in time for anybody to dig this deep, it took me about 10 hours to research all this, and there's much more. We're only about halfway through the show. Tom Dewey established the concept for the World Trade Center. while he was governor of New York. I have not been able to establish a connection between John and Tom, though. They could be related, they could not be related. That's where I need your guys' help. I think TruthStream Media would do a really good job of tracking that down. Someone needs to go to Ancestry.com or something, figure it out. What we do know is that Governor Tom Dewey doubled spending on education, okay? Doubled it during his years as governor. And during the same years that John Dewey was ramping up his push for a progressive liberal education reform in New York. So Thomas Dewey, the governor, was approving doubling legislation spending, and John Dewey, I guess they called him a psychologist, was lapping up the money at this exact same time, in the exact same years. And these years in the 1940s was where Trump was born out of. One of the first experimental elite schools to mirror Dewey's educational philosophy. Dewey's whole philosophy was learn by doing. Now, I specifically remember this philosophy. Why? Because when I was at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, we had a learn by doing philosophy. It was actually Dewey's philosophy, the Marxist philosophy. I didn't know it at the time because I was in college, but basically our program in our graphic communication department was learn by doing. And therefore, we spent a lot of time in these labs. This whole concept of a lab, what came out of this Dewey 1940s, 1930s, okay? The whole structure of our education system came out of this. And in fact, it found its foundations in the Skull and Bones Society at Yale. And that's what I'm going to show you next as well. Now, it says here, Ord and Leather highlighted the importance of Dewey's work for outdoor educators and his conceptualism of transactional nature of experience and subsequent meaning-making inherent experience. So they're referencing Dewey here in this Forest school, okay? I'm linking Q Forest to Dewey is what I'm doing. So who was Dewey and what was his educational philosophy? Well, he's credited with the title Father of Education, and he basically brought capitalism into the classroom and Marxism by controlling how teachers teach. And they implemented a learn by doing philosophy to prepare students for the workforce rather than for life. They had standardized testing, IQ tests. There was no free play. So they didn't want recess. They wanted learning to be part of everything, even recess. And he actually stated at one point that he thought blacks were socially inept. Dewey considered American non-white minorities to be biologically equal to whites, but socially deficient. This is the school Trump's dad invested in, and the school that Trump and all his brothers and sisters went to. He became the father of industrialized education. Basically, he was a Marxist. There's a lot of, if you type in John Dewey and you plug this in and do research on it, you're going to find a lot of like positive things being said about it. And of course there are, because that's what they want you to believe, right? The problem is that is not the case. And I have a book that I'm going to reference, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of the show doing, is going through the link between Dewey, the Illuminati, and Skull and Bones, right out of a book written by a very brave man who exposed Skull and Bones, Yale, and how Yale has basically taken over the entire educational system. Dewey's principal achievement was perhaps his educational reform. He was the chief prophet of progressive education. After 20 years, that movement, learning by doing, had become a major factor in American education in the late 30s, and in 1941, the New York State Department of Education approved a 6-year experiment in schools embodying the Dewey philosophy. So how exactly do these secret societies control the world through education? And what makes this Dewey character so sinister? Well, I took highlights of Anthony Sutton's book on secret societies and how they control through education. And I'm going to share that with you now. Here's the book, How the Skull and Bones Order Controls Education by Anthony Sutton. New World Order, Illuminati, Freemasons. Now, this just isn't some guy writing a book. So this is Anthony Sutton. He's the one we're going to be looking at. His writings about these secret societies. He was born on Valentine's Day. Died at 77 years old. As far as I'm concerned, this guy sounds like a hero. He even called out Soviet technology, saying that none of it was new, that 90 to 95% came directly or indirectly from the United States and its allies. This guy was one of the first truthers. He was the one uncovering this war profiteering and sacrifice through wars, in which all of us are involved, are the little people, are the ones dying, and the people at the top are just moving pawns on a chessboard. In effect, the United States and the NATO countries have built the Soviet Union, its industrial and its military capabilities. This massive construction job has taken 50 years, since the revolution in 1917. He also talks about North Korea, Hitler. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, this guy shoots right between the eyes, and he's correct. He exposed the skull and bones, and that's what we're going to read now. He used a combination of information on skull and bones, such as Yale yearbooks and previously unreleased documents sent to him by Charlotte Thompson, whose father was Skull and Bones member. That's what we're gonna review all this right now. We're blowing this out of the water. To speculate that they had played an important role coordinating the political and economical relationships underlying the historical events Sutton wrote of in his previous works. So we're gonna look at that. So this is Sutton. I wanted to show you a little bit about the author, show you he's not just some nobody. I found the ebook online, and in the ebook, this is where he spoke out against war profiteering, which is what we've been involved with since the founding of the World Trade Center. Profiteering after World War II, they needed a new project, a new plan. He accused the U.S. of financing both sides of the wars, and he mentions John Dewey and G. Stanley Hall, who basically modeled the grade school that Trump went to, and his father invested heavily in, Q Forest. Memorandum number 1, it all began at Yale. Again, this is by Sutton. The first volume of this series introduced the order, presented 3 preliminary hypotheses with examples of the evidence to come. We also asserted that any group that wanted to control the future of American society had first to control education. Remember, Dewey was the father of education. We're going to get to him. He's mentioned in this book. The population of the future. This volume will outline the way in which education has been controlled by the order. They're talking about Skull and Bones. It all began at Yale. Even the official Yale history is aware of Yale's power and success. Yale controls education. This is unbelievable. This notable trio were all initiated into the order within a few years of each other. They immediately set off for Europe. All 3 went to study philosophy at the University of Berlin, where post-Hegelian philosophy had a monopoly. We'll get into exactly what Hegelian dialect actually is. This will be a good refresher. William Wundt, the founder of experimental psychology in Germany and the later source of the dozens of American PhDs, and Dewey was one of them, who came back from Leipzig, Germany, to start the modern American education movement. Now, Leipzig was under the control of Hitler during World War II, and just after World War II is where all this went down. Hegelian philosophical ferment. There were 2 groups of these Hegelians, the right and the left. They opposed each other, but they liked each other because that's what it's about. It's about creating a paradigm, a right and left paradigm, to keep all of us confused. When I tell you guys voting is a lie, I mean it. I'm not just saying that because it sounds good. When you pick a team, when you pick Trump or you pick somebody else and you buy into that lie, you're playing right into their hands. Both groups use Hegelian theory of the state as a start point, i.e., the state is superior to the individual. Prussian militarism, Nazism, Marxism have the same philosophic roots. And in fact, as I just demonstrated to you, the roots came out of Germany. Let's keep going with this. Now I'm going to link this book, this ebook, in the description when the show's over, so you guys can read this for yourself. Or use public funds for its own objectives. What it's referencing here is how the order got state money and federal money to start the schools. Yale was actually founded by this state money. Then they used that to control the school. The order's control over all Yale was evident by the 1870s. They've obtained control of Yale. Its business is performed by them. Money paid to the college must pass into their hands and be subject to their will. No doubt, they are worthy men in themselves, but the many whom they looked down upon while in college cannot so far forget as to give money freely into their hands. So basically what that's saying is these initial people that came out of this Leipzig school who founded Yale with federal money, held on to the money, and basically Yale in its early days was a very poor school. The buildings were in disrepair because they was corrupt already. The society was never as obnoxious to the college as it is today. And it is just this ill feeling that shuts the pockets of non-members. Never before has it shown such arrogance and self-fancied superiority. It grasps the college press and endeavors to rule in all. It does not deign to show its credentials, but clutches at power with the silence of conscience guilt. Prime purpose is not to teach subject matter, but to condition children to live as socially integrated citizen units in an organic society, a real-life enactment of the Hegelian absolute state. In this state, the individual finds freedom only in obedience to the state. Consequently, the function of education is to prepare the individual citizen unit for smooth entry into the organic whole. This is what Hegelianism is. It actually even tried to institute the ability to learn through a program they use for deaf-mute people. So far as education is concerned, the Illuminati objective was as follows. We must win the common people in every corner. This will be obtained chiefly by means of the schools and by open, hearty behavior, show, condescension, popularity, and toleration of their prejudices, which we shall at our leisure root out and dispel. See how that works? This is about as sinister as it gets. This was the stated goal of the Illuminati. They knew they had to get control through education. So the link between German experimental psychology and the American educational system is through American psychologist G. Stanley Hall. This is a new person I'm introducing into this conversation, G. Stanley Hall. As I showed you, G. Stanley Hall and Dewey were the psychologists who fashioned Q Forest, the school that Donald Trump went to and all his brothers and sisters, the one that his dad was on the board and donated a wing to. Are you starting to get, everyone wants to say he's not elite. He is elite. People are just in denial. Let's keep going with this. G. Stanley Hall was at the core of the order, the Yale Order Skull and Bones. William Wundt, professor of philosophy, University of Leipzig. The day that George Bush Jr. was born is when they conceptualized the World Trade Center. That's when they passed the legislation on July 6th. And it's saying here that William Wundt, this is a new character, was undoubtedly the major influence of G. Stanley Hall. William Wundt, influenced by Johann Herbart, and these are all characters of like the Illuminati, secret societies, and this whole Hegelian dialect. This guy applied Hegel to education, which in turn was picked up by Hall and John Dewey and modern educational theorists in the United States. Galen view of the individual as a valueless cog in the state. That's how they see us. This one-team view of the world was brought back from Leipzig to the United States by G. Stanley Hall and other Americans and went through what is known among psychologists as the Americanization of want, partially Marxist. You ever wonder when you're born why some people are rich and some people are poor? Because it's designed that way. Do you ever wonder why they don't teach like people like you and I how to be rich in school? You ever wonder why they don't go, okay, we're going to have an investment class now in 4th grade. We're going to show you what you're really supposed to do to build wealth in this life. But instead, they train you to be a slave. They know how to do it. They know how to make money out of thin air. Those are all the people that rule us. Even when some of these people go bankrupt, they're never bankrupt. They always have money. That's how they keep control over all us. Doctoral students from one and all found out through the United States, this is important, they established departments of psychology and education by the score. 117 psychological laboratories just in the period up to 1930. Prominent among these students were John Dewey. He was a brainchild from this group of Marxists. We're almost through this, you guys. Around the turn of the century, the order had made significant penetration into the educational establishment. Remember, when they say the order, they're talking about Yale. It's all started with Yale. Now you know the deep roots of Skull and Bones. They control the educational establishment. By utilizing the power of members in strategic positions, they were able to select, groom, and position non-members with similar philosophy and activist traits. Now let's see how the order moved into more specialized fields of education. Then we need to examine how the order fits with John Dewey, the source of modern American educational philosophy. Then how the order spread Dewey throughout the system. So Dewey's a very central character in this person's book. Okay, it's not just mentioned once or twice. He's a very central character. We're not cherry picking here. This is huge. We can deduce the order's objectives for education from evidence already presented, and by examining the work and influence of John Dewey, the arch creator of modern educational theory. How do we do this? We first need to examine Dewey's relationship with the order, then compare Dewey's philosophy with Hegelian dialect, and with the philosophy and objectives of modern educational practice. These educational objectives have not, by and large, been brought about by governmental action. In fact, if the present state of education had been brought about by legislation, it would have been challenged on the grounds of unconstitutionality. And they pour all these funds into the education system to try and shape it. The implementation we'll describe in a future volume how the order controls foundations. In fact, the history of the implementation of Dewey's objectives is also the history of the larger foundations. Dewey's linked in with Carnegie, Rockefeller, Peabody, Sloan, Slater, and 20th century. John Dewey worked for his doctorate at Johns Hopkins. Dewey's psychology was taken from G. Stanley Hall, we just mentioned, the first American student to receive a doctorate from Wilhelm Wundt at the University of Leipzig. In brief, philosophy and psychology came to Dewey from academics hand-picked by the order. A blend of Hegelian philosophy applied to Wundtian experimental psychology. In the work and implementation of the ideas of John Dewey that we find the objective of the order. When the order brought G. Leipzig to Johns Hopkins University, John Dewey was already there, waiting to write his doctoral dissertation on the psychology of Kant, already a Hegelian in philosophy. The school is primarily a social institution, education being a social process. This is John Dewey's own words. Listen very closely. The school is primarily a social institution, education being a social process. The school is simply that form of community life in which all those agencies are concentrated that will be most effective in bringing the child to share in the inherited resources of the race and to his own powers for social ends. Education, therefore, is a process of living and not a preparation for future living. So according to Dewey, his education is not child-centered, but state-centered. Dewey educational system does not accept the role of developing a child's talents, but contrarily, only to prepare his child to function as a unit in an organic whole. In blunt terms, a cog in the wheel of an organic society. Whereas most Americans have moral values rooted in the individual, the value of the school systems are rooted in the Hegelian concept of the state as the absolute. For Hegel, the individual has no value except as he or she performs a function in society. Dewey tried to brush the freedom of the individual to one side. Freedom only in obedience to the state. As one critic, Horace Callan, stated, John Dewey had a blindness to the sheer individuality of individuals. For Dewey, man has no individual rights. Man exists only to serve the state. This approach is reflected in political systems based on Hegel, whether it be Soviet communism or Hitlerian National Socialism. John Dewey follows Hegel's organic view of society. For example, education consists either in the ability to use one's power in a social direction or else an ability to share in the experience of others and thus widen the individual consciousness to that of the race. That education is to prepare a person to fit into society rather than develop individual talents. This is why school is so boring for people, you guys. To Herbert, who influenced by the Swiss Pestalozzi, personal development cannot be achieved by developing individual talents. It must take the form of preparation to serve society, according to Herbert, Dewey, and Pestalozzi. Pestalozzi was a member of the Illuminati with the code name Alfred. John Dewey was one of the first doctorates from Johns Hopkins under Hall and Morris, followed by Woodrow Wilson, who was a president of Princeton University before he became president of the United States. John Dewey, the originator of modern educational theory, took his doctorate at Johns Hopkins under Hegelians. Dewey's work is pure Hegel in theory and practice and is totally inconsistent with the Constitution of the U.S. and rights of the individual. A comparison of German Hegelians, John Dewey, and modern educational theorists demonstrates the parallelism. Children do not go to school to develop individual talents, but to prepare as units in an organic society. In brief, the order initiated and controlled education in this century by controlling its content. The content is at variance with the traditional view of education, which sees each child as unique, and the school is a means of developing this uniqueness. They appear to be preparing children for political objective, and this sums it all up, which also happens to be the objective of the order. The emphasis is on global living, preparing for a global society. It is apparently of no concern to the educational establishment that children can't read, can't write, and can't do elementary mathematics, but they are going to be ready for the brave new world. And that's it, you guys. Those are the highlights of what I found. So you got to ask yourself, what can we do about it? Well, what you do is you don't participate in it. You don't vote. Voting's a scam. It's a waste of time. And inadvertently, you give your permission. When you write your name on a card and you put it in a ballot box and you vote for somebody, the lesser of two evils, you're giving that lesser of two evils your spiritual permission to continue lying to us. And believe it or not, some people are like, oh, if we didn't vote, then Hillary would have been president. No, that's a lie. They already know who they're going to make president. All they're trying to do is convince all of us that it's a legitimate election. That's what their job is. That's the purpose of the media, to make it look like a battle. Oh, it's, it's Rocky versus the Russian. And in the last round, Rocky pulls out a victory. They have to put, hype this whole thing up, create a bunch of drama. It's what they're good at. This is why Trump shoots his mouth off and says stupid stuff. He does it on purpose to rile everybody up, to keep this right-left paradigm going, as I just demonstrated to you. Okay? They were brought up in this to learn this. That's why his dad invested all this money into this school. He's probably friends with Dewey. They were around the same time. We can't find historical records of that, but I bet you if I dug deep enough, went onto like microfiche and libraries, I could find it. You know what I was looking for? I was actually looking for the bill, the actual World Trade Center bill, because they called it a corporation in the bill. You can find people referencing it, but I can't find the actual bill. I would like to read that bill and find out what these plans were that they had for this thing, and why did it get approved on the very day that George Bush Jr. was born, in the same year. And George Bush Sr. was 22 years old when this went down. Yale, of course. And this was the first year at Yale, as a matter of fact, when he was 22. He just got out of the military. I'm talking about George Bush Sr. now. And guess what? If you're a little lost about everything I'm talking about, I have a 2-part series called A Secret of War. You need to watch both of those parts, and all of this will make sense about the original board of directors who established the concept of a World Trade Center in New York. Okay? They were the ones that established the concept. This guy was on the board, David Schultz. And everybody else that was on the board was either military. That's weird. Why would you put military on a board for World Trade? It doesn't make any sense. There was a guy from RCA. There was another guy from Chase Bank. There was a couple of Jewish people. Oh, Trump's not an inside man. He's different. He's an independent. He made his money independently. He never got involved in politics. All these people are involved in politics. They're not going to let you just march up to the presidency. It's all a Hegelian dialect. And people buy this stuff. So here's the school that he went to. And it costs like almost 30 grand a year to go there. Okay, it's an elite school. It's not just private school, it's an elite school. That's why Trump went there. Hugh Forrest. So this is the early indoctrination.
And what we've learned is that as matter falls onto the black hole, it will start rotating at speeds which are close to the speed of light, and will become hot and emit.
What Once we've gathered enough speed around Gargantua,
Our only chance to save people on Earth. If I can find a way to transmit the quantum data I'll find in there, they might still make it.
Is that as matter falls onto the black hole, it will start rotating at speeds which are close to the speed of matter falls onto the black hole, it will start rotating at speeds which are close to the speed of
What do we see in this dim distance? Is a little like traveling in time. Man's instinctive curiosity about the past manifests itself today in a new type of archaeology. It uses a giant machine whose aim is to go back in time. To understand the origins of the universe 15 billion years ago. It's situated near Geneva at the foot of the Jura Mountains. The LEP accelerates electrons and positons. It accelerates protons, which are 2,000 times heavier than electrons, at a speed close to that of the speed of light.
whose aim is to go back in time. Is that as matter falls onto the black hole, it will start rotating at speeds which are close to the speed of
Where did we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Soon, no doubt, thanks to the LHC, we shall have the beginnings of an
As matter approaches a black hole, it rotates around its rim at the speed of light. Or, accelerating matter close to the speed of light makes a black hole at its center. They're really saying the same thing, aren't they? April 10th, or 10/4 in other calendars, is the date that scientists chose to announce what we are told is the very first imaging of a black hole. Well, that's interesting because 10/4, the calendar date, has 88 days remaining in the year. And 10:04, the clock hour, was what the clock read when Marty jumped through time at 88 miles per hour in the film Back to the Future. And 88 days into the year is March 29th, which just so happened to be the date that CERN chose to let ages 8 to 88 in for free at the CERN Film Festival. Is this all in our heads? I don't think so. What's really going on at CERN? And are they trying to open a black hole at the center of the LHC by spinning particles in a circle at the speed of light? They tell us that these particles begin to act weird as they accelerate them. They act interdimensionally. They become heavy, and they even try to slow themselves down. Is what they're experiencing here a type of event horizon emerging during these experiments? It's interesting because a golf course sits at the center of the LHC, where a theoretical black hole could be opening up. The golf course has 18 holes. 18 black holes. 6 plus 6 plus 6. Take care and be safe, you guys.
You can't stop me, Quinn.
Quinn.
You can't stop me, Quinn.
I could be an archangel. Gideon says he'll teach me.
17 seconds.
17 seconds.
Did he tell you that's how long they live? Not the good ones. Gideon's an 8-year veteran. At least they're still killing him.
He was hand for 17 years, 17 good years.
So here we sit, 17 years later, holding it all together. How long can hate hold a thing together?
Well, 17 years is quite a long time.
How long can hate hold a thing together?
Driven by one purpose: defeat. Even then we couldn't believe they were real. Ancient man. Knowledge is the only weapon we've got left. In the beginning it was ignorance that destroyed us.
Ancient man who made them into myths. But nature made something far more terrible. Too late, our scientists discovered their true identity.
closely, you'll see this majestic medieval monument is falling apart. On the roof, he showed us walls chipping, stones stapled together.
You'll see.
There's a risk to the whole cathedral falling down. You'll see. Church officials say the cathedral is for now safe to visit, but it has reached a tipping point. You'll see.
Well, guys, another day. And everything is all about the crowns, right? Well, the crown Cyrus really did bring about 1984. It's interesting that the word crown is actually mentioned in the King James Bible 84 times. Here are some of the times that the word crown is actually mentioned in the King James Bible. Some of those crowns are good, but many of those crowns are bad. 17 total crowns and horns. So, with all this talk about Q and crowns, I decided to open up the Bible and take a look. And, of course, the floodgates opened, and I found this. Now, someone had already put this graphic together, but when I looked at the graphic, I noticed that 7 crowns and 10 horns is a total of 17. That's in Revelation 12. We also have Revelation 13. 10 crowns, 7 heads. 17. Revelation 17. We have 7 heads, 10 horns. Are you seeing a pattern here? The dragon, the beast, the woman riding the beast. Now, what does the number 17 have to do with Q? Well, we know that the letter Q is represented as the number 17 alphanumerically. When you count through the alphabet, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, and so on and so forth. Basic numerical equivalents. And the elite like to use these numerical equivalents to hide things in esoteric meanings. So, we have a bit of a pattern, but okay, big deal, Casey. That's just a coincidence, right? You need more than that to make a case for the letter Q being related to the book of Revelation. Well, we're going to look at some of those other coincidences. Look at the serpent next to the graphic here, and you can see that the letter Q almost looks like a serpent crawling out of a hole. And if you look at the capital letter Q, let's pull that up. In cursive, it also looks like a crouching serpent. Here's the letter Q here. Let's take a look at the cursive version of this. This isn't just the book of Revelation. There's so much more to this that we're going to cover this morning. So here's the cursive Q, and again, it looks like a serpent crouching and coiled over itself. Now, when delving into the history of the letter Q, I didn't really find any direct references to a serpent. In fact, it's most closely associated with the shape of a monkey. Let's take a search on this page and find that. A knot or even a monkey with a tail hanging down. And so basically the downstroke of the letter Q is the tail of the monkey. It's kind of weird. Monkey see, monkey do, right? Q is the name also of the Guatemalan currency called the Quetzal. Here it is right here. They actually call it Q, as you can see here. This is the symbol of the Quetzal for the Guatemalan currency. Now, they named the Quetzal in Guatemala after this bird, who was named after Quetzalcoatl. And this particular bird lays eggs that have an incubation period of 6 plus 6 plus 6 days. 18 days is the incubation period
of the Guatemalan bird called the quetzal, which was named after Quetzalcoatl. Let me show you this here. This is the resplendent quetzal. Look at this bird. The colors on this bird. Now they talk about this down here, about the occult meaning behind this bird, and that its incubation period for the eggs is 666. Myth and legend, the resplendent quetzal was considered divine, associated with the snake god Quetzalcoatl. The Aztec and the Maya viewed it as the god of the air. We know who the ruler of the air is, do we not? Now, we talked a lot on this channel about how birds are very close in their DNA to a snake. And this is why they call the feathered serpent the feathered serpent. Okay? Because feathers are on birds, and birds are very closely related to reptiles. Now, that is not a statement of evolution. That's just the genetic makeup of a bird. Just like humans are very close in DNA to a monkey, even though we didn't come from a monkey. Now that we're talking about monkeys. And some people misunderstand what I was saying about these birds being related to serpents, thinking that I was believing in evolution. Absolutely not. But we would all agree that certain animals seem to be related to one another in the way that they were created by God. So, it's interesting because this Guatemalan quetzal, you can see actually the number 17, which again is alphanumerically the equivalent of Q, and its ISO number 4217. I don't think that's an accident. Now, we decoded this film called Q. It's a 1982 film, and here you see the letter Q shaped like the serpent. So you know that I'm not making this up, okay? I'm not just saying the letter Q looks like a serpent. They show it to you right here. This was 1982, and this was all about Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. And this thing flies around the city, and it lives on top of the Chrysler building. If you want to check out that decode on my other channel, this is something you might want to look at. You can do a search on that channel for the letter Q, and you'll find this decode. Look at this in the background. They even have the famous two buildings back here in the skyline. And there's much more to this than meets the eye, but in that decode I definitively draw a link between the letter Q and Quetzalcoatl. Okay? Now, here's where things get interesting. The earliest form of the letter Q was called the cough. Okay? Think about that for a minute. Cough. And it's the 19th. 19? Hello? 19th letter, CV19 in the Aramaic alphabet. As you can see here, 19th letter of, they call it that alphabet. Can't say that word on YouTube anymore. But they're the victims, right? And it was based on the eye of the needle. Here it is right here. The origin of the glyph shape of Quoth is uncertain. It is usually suggested to have originally depicted either a sewing needle, specifically the eye of the needle, or the back of a head and neck, or the nape of the neck. And they talk about the monkey tail as well. And that's interesting because there's a Bible verse about the eye of a needle and a camel trying to pass through the eye of the needle, and that being compared to a rich man trying to get to heaven. Well, Trump is the richest president ever to serve times 2. Now, they even have a computing code for the letter Q, and it seems to encode the number 17 as well. Trying to get you to understand that 17 and Q go hand in hand. Here they have the number 17 in reverse. The small letter Q, hex. They've got 71 is Unicode, UTF, numeric character reference, and ASCII is 17 backwards. So, what's up with the number 17? Well, I pulled up some information on the number 17, and it is a very bizarre number. It forms a twin prime with the number 19. Again, the number 19 comes up associated with the letter Q, as I just mentioned a bit ago. Twin primes with the number 19. So 17 and 19 are related. And the number 17 is the sum of the first 4 primes, which makes it very unique. The numbers 2, 3, 5, and 7 are the first 4 primes, and that added together equals 17. Within that, we have the number 237, which is the beast number. So, there's much more to this Q than meets the eye. Monkeys, number 19s, Quetzalcoatl, all kinds of bizarre, esoteric history associated with the letter Q. And so after looking at all of this, you have to ask yourself, why would anyone in their right mind choose such a letter to start a movement? And that should give you some of the answers that you're looking for with relation to this. That's what I wanted to show you guys today. Appreciate everybody coming out. Let's go into the chat for a bit. How's everybody hanging in there? So what I've been trying to get people to understand for a very long time is that all of this was scripted a very long time ago. They would not leave something like the most powerful country in the entire world up to chance. They would not leave that to chance. There was a very carefully orchestrated deployment of our United States history, and it started a very long time ago, maybe even back to the beginning. So somebody had sent this to my Facebook page showing John F. Kennedy's gravesite, and what they immediately noticed was that it is the shape of a Q. So of course what we do on this channel is we dig deeper, and we understand that there's a reason why John F. Kennedy's gravesite is shaped like a Q. So I drew a line to align the gravesite. Where is this Q pointing? It's very easy to determine an alignment in Google Earth. You simply grab this measuring tool up here and you pull the line and you line it up with the side of this structure here. As you can see down here, there's a structure where the actual memorial is. This is called the Eternal Flame, John F. Kennedy's grave. And you can line this up and you can find out where it's pointing. To my shock and horror, JFK's grave is pointing at 66 degrees. Now that's not all. We know that Trump lives on the 66th floor. So when I began digging into this, I realized that Trump was actually 17 years old when JFK met his maker. In fact, Trump was 17 years old 5 months and 8 days before JFK met his maker. There's your 58. And that's why Trump Tower is 58 stories tall. That's why Trump is the 58th elected president, or the 58th election. This is why Mar-a-Lago has 58 rooms. And this is why Trump was 17 years old. 17 is Q. when JFK met his maker. Now, there's more to this. This is the Eternal Flame JFK Memorial. And we know that there was all these numbers associated with Trump as well, like 77 and 88. And look at the coordinates of where they decided to place this Eternal Flame Memorial. 38.88 by 77.07. These are the coordinates. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what's this all about? Well, I believe that they may have chose Trump back then when he was 17 years old, putting him on the track to become the number 58 president. And this is why Trump opened Trump Tower exactly 20 years, or not exactly 20 years, but 1983 is when he opened Trump Tower with the 58 and 66th floor. This is why Trump wants to take us back to the moon, because JFK did it, and now he's going to do it, quote unquote. Do you see all the similarities now? Do you understand now why there's a queue here at JFK's website? That all of this has been orchestrated since the beginning. 66 degrees. You can't unsee this. You can't unsee this. Now, this is crazy because not only is this aligned at 66 degrees, but it points basically back to Washington, to the Capitol. The Capitol building. Look at this. I can't even believe what I'm looking at right now. That's a Q. The numbers align. Trump was the chosen one all the way back at 17 years old. Now, we'll be digging deeper into this to find out exactly what was going on during that time in Trump's life for him to be chosen at 17 years old. We know that his father was already wealthy in New York during those years, but we don't know too much more about that. Now look, we're following the track. We're going from Q, we're heading through DC. What is this thing here? Let's turn this on. Places. This is unbelievable. Normally I only go live once in a day, but I had to show you guys this. Sorry for the technical difficulties in the first show this morning. Look at this. What is this? The Lincoln Memorial? Let's see here. This is the Lincoln Memorial. So, we go from JFK to Lincoln. And then, of course, this alignment here we've shown you is 88 degrees. Let me show you that real quick. So you know I'm not making any of this up. Sad I have to say that, but there is a lot of disinfo in the truth community. You got to be very careful who you follow and check everything out for yourself. Here's the 88 degree alignment of Washington, D.C., the memorial, and the Lincoln Memorial, and that connects down to the JFK grave, as we just showed you. Q. Let's zoom in on this so you can see this 88 degree alignment. Now, the Vatican, in its obelisk and rotunda, right? Because the Vatican has an obelisk and a rotunda, also lines up to 88 degrees, as well as Washington's Vatican and rotunda. All of this stuff is carefully planned out. They leave nothing to chance, almost to the point where there may have been some kind of supercomputer all the way back then, keeping track of all this evil. Look at this. It's almost 88.88. Unbelievable. Now you know what the 88s mean. It's time and space. It's also what they believe is their right to rule, time and space. And of course, it's all controlled by Lucifer at the top. This is the truth of what's going on. Now, let's look into this a little bit more. I need a little bit of help for you guys to look at what was going on in 1963 around Trump and his father, Fred Trump, and maybe even John, his uncle. What happened in 1963 that was so important in Trump's life, other than him being 17, which alphanumerically is Q? Look at all this. I'm going to read through this later. I don't want to keep you guys online. I know other people are online right now, and I want to be courteous to other people. We all kind of have our times that we go live. 17 years old. Unbelievable. All right. Let's go in here. Thanks everyone for showing up. If you have any quick questions before
Oh, by the way, it's 2006.
2006? What does it mean? 2006.
If you are truly in the year 2004, then be forewarned.
Tell me about the future. What's it like in the year 2006?
I'm afraid the world's pretty much the same. I wish we could have done this walk together.
Nothing in my life. Well then, I think you just graduated from the bush leagues into the majors, girl. You hot little digits! Let me lay my 2020s on on you. Let me lay my 2020s on you. Let me lay my 2020s on you.
Oh, how I love you, Letty. Count the ways.
He'll send you back through time by running magic through ya.
He'll send you back through time by running magic through ya.
We agreed, and we concealed all the evidence of their landing.
So these are real flying saucers, and the World's Fair was just a cover-up for their landing.
More non-humans arrive every year, and they live among us in secret.
And the World's Fair was just a cover-up for their landing.
Why else would we hold it in Queens?
Why else would we hold it in Queens?
You're coming with me.
What?
Come with me. Put up a bionet all the way around Manhattan. If it's not human, I don't want it to leave this island.
Yes, sir.
Warning. 8 minutes to the destruction of Earth.
Why else would we hold it in Queens? Why else would we hold it in Queens? Why else would we hold it in Queens? We agreed, and we concealed all the evidence of their landing. So these are real flying saucers. More non-humans arrive every year, and they live among us in secret. And the World's Fair was just a cover-up for their landing. And the World's Fair was just a cover-up for their landing.
You slimy, gut-sucking, intestinal parasite!
not part of the job description. You just repair drones. Don't go into the radiation zone. Don't ask too many questions.
So, let's get started with this final decode on the Manifest series. Now, after going through all 3 seasons, it appears as though the peacock symbolizes the one world race under the beast. Now, how can I say that confidently? Well, the peacock is the key. And how do we know that the peacock is about combining the races into one beast race? Well, we had uncovered the Jackson 5 Triumph album. Here it is right here. This is the back cover of the 14th Jackson 5 album. And we had discovered that it was fashioned directly after the 17th tarot card that we found in the series Manifest. And both have this prominent star on the front of the Jackson album, Jackson 5 album called Triumph. Here's the prominent star. And then on the back cover, it's got clouds and a peacock. Pull that one up here. As well as the stars on the back, just like the tarot card. So, how did this one slip by everybody in 1980? I think during that time, Michael Jackson was supposedly a Jehovah's Witness, right? But yet, here's tarot card symbolism on the Jackson 5 album. Now, I'm going to explain to you why the peacock card is the 17th card, because these numbers have significance. Here's the card from the Manifest series, and as you can see, it's the 17th card. It's got the clouds and the stars, just like the Jackson 5 album. The legs are crossed down here at the bottom. And why would this be the 17th card? Well, I was digging and doing some research, and I found that the peacock has 17 or 170 eye spots. Now, this is the maximum number, but according to this study, the only reason why a peacock would have less than 170 eye spots would be because they had some broken feathers or something. So, the target number is 170, which is 17, of course. And this is why they probably named the tarot card for the peacock the 17th number. Now, Q is also the 17th letter of the alphabet, and this is Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. So, we've made all these discoveries and linking all this together. And I do not believe in evolution, obviously. I'm a Christian. But there's something bizarre about the shared DNA between birds and reptiles. There are also likenesses between animals. Obviously, the closest animal that we have to what looks like a human would be like an ape or a monkey. And in terms of chickens and birds, their closest animal that they are is like a reptile or like a T-Rex. Now, you've seen these references mentioned often in films. They talk about these chickens being winged or feathered T-Rexes. Okay. But here's where things get crazy, because instead of serpent fangs, these peacocks and roosters have talons. Now, what could the talons represent? Well, I believe they're hollow, like the fangs of a serpent, or at least represent the fangs of a serpent, the double shot that we're all being told to get. Now, at the bottom of the album, let's go back to here for the Jackson 5 back cover called Triumph. There is something else that's very peculiar. It mentions humanity in one race. Let me find that. Now, what is the importance of humanity being in one race? Let's read this again. We read it on the last show. It's signed by Michael Jackson and Peacock Productions. It says, through the ages, the peacock has been honored and praised for its attractive, illustrious beauty. In all the bird family, the peacock is the only species that integrates all colors into one and displays this radiance of fire only when in love. We, like the peacock, try to integrate all races into one through the love and power of music. Signed, Michael Jackson for Peacock Productions. Now you understand that this whole one race thing is about something far more than all of us races getting along with each other. This is a master race. This is a race above humanity. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but the two shall not cleave, says the book of Daniel. Now, this explains it all, because peacocks having every color in the rainbow and it being blended into one sounds like the mixing of all the races. Now, here's what else I found. This blew me away. I took a closer look at the lead song on this album, Triumph by the Jackson 5. The lead song was Can You Feel It? Now, if you're still on the fence about this whole mixing of the bloodlines, understand that in the very lyrics of this song, they mention twice mixing of the blood. You can't make this up, you guys. Because we're all the same. Yes, the blood inside me is inside you. And again, yes, the blood inside my veins is inside of you. There you go. Those are the two bites, the two fang marks. That's why it's mentioned twice. Now, what else the lyrics talk about that is very eerie and relates directly back to the Manifest series is two people sharing the same feeling. One person and their actions being felt by another person. This is the main theme of the Manifest series, you guys. Now we know why the Peacock Tarot card emerged, because it was all pointing back to the Jackson 5 in this album, mixing of the blood, which is what the whole series is about. When the passengers come back and they share their callings, their shared hallucinations. Let's read through some of these lyrics here and make sure you guys are with me before we continue on with the show. Appears as though everybody's here. Very good. Can you feel it? If you look around, the whole world's coming together now. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Feel it in the air. The wind is taking it everywhere. All the colors of the world should be that. Loving each other wholeheartedly. These are the colors of the rainbow. That's what the peacock represents. Take my message to my brother. Tell him twice. Spread the word. Who's hating his brother when hate won't do? Because we're all the same. Can you feel it? Every breath you take is someone's death in another place. This was the exact theme in Manifest. These shared feelings, shared hallucinations. Every healthy smile is hunger and strife to another child. Again, shared feelings. Talk about the stars shine, promising salvation. Now, this sounds like a positive message, but after what I just showed you, there's something deeper to this. Now, if you're not convinced about the connections here, understand that the peacock is said to be created by the very serpent wrapped around the cosmic egg. This is the Wikipedia page for the peacock. And look at this. It says here, Melek, which sounds a lot like Malik, or MLK, or Molech, the peacock angel. Remember, peacock's also synonymous with Lucifer, as well as Azazel. The Yazidi consider Melech an emanation of God and a benevolent angel who has redeemed himself from his fall and has become a demiurge who created the cosmos from the cosmic egg. Now, when I saw this, I got chills because this is everything we've been talking about, you guys. this serpent wrapped around the seed of the woman. Are you remembering these talks that we've had about this? We've been studying this for years. How is it that the peacock could overlap our research so precisely? This is the cosmic egg. And we determine that in large part, the egg is the method by which they create vaccines. They inject them, they culture them, they can then backlight or candle the eggs to see if it took and if it's growing. This is in the scene, of course, from I, Pet, Goat 2, which came out in 2012, but eerily shows what appears to be the production of a vaccine, except there's a child inside. And it's backlit, just like the process, the candling process of these vaccines. Now, the current vaccines are not made in this fashion. I think maybe only one of them is. The rest are cultured a different way. But look at this. I believe this is the first step in the mixing of the serpent with the seed of the woman. The serpent wrapping around the seed of the woman, which is the egg. 2 spurs of the peacock, 2 needles, 2 doses. Now, there are some positive aspects. Apparently, I don't know this to be true, but a symbolism associated with the peacock. Solomon actually ordered peacocks on a specific island to be in the temple. And it says here in this Wikipedia article, the eyes in the peacock's tail feathers symbolize the all-seeing Christian God, and in some interpretations, the church. A peacock drinking from a vase. Let's look this up so you guys can read along with me. A peacock drinking from a vase is used as a symbol of a Christian believer drinking from the waters of eternal life. Peacock can also symbolize the cosmos if one interprets its tail with its many eyes as the vault of heaven dotted by the sun, moon, and stars. By Christian adoption of old Persian and Babylonian symbolism, in which the peacock was associated with paradise and the tree of life, the bird is again associated with immortality. In Christian iconography, the peacock is often depicted next to the tree of life. The peacock motif was revived in the Renaissance iconography that unified Hera and Juno, and on which European painters focused. Now you are recognizing Hera and Juno as we read it right here off of the Peacock Wikipedia page, because Hera and Juno was in the Manifest series next to the peacock, remember, on that storyboard? And we exposed that because those Hera and Juno are both Hadron Collider programs. Those are the names of the Hadron Collider programs. So there's something up here, you guys. This is deep spiritual stuff. Why would they be naming all this stuff after all this stuff if it didn't have dark spiritual meaning? Now, I just showed you what they are telling us are the positive aspects of the peacock, but understand that even if this was the case, even if we believe this to be so, this could be wrongful symbolism, you know, that like many of us don't believe in wearing the cross because you're creating an idol. This could be that, okay? But even if it was something good, understand that the devil takes God's holy things and he flips the script to try to confuse God's people and deceive the world. Now, before we get into this montage, I got a couple more things to show you. Because this is the lost book of Nostradamus, and this is the 35th plate, it's called. And you can see the peacock, and it appears on the wheel of time. But what does all this mean? I don't know. But there's the peacock right there. He's holding what appears to be an egg cut in half, flipped upside down. That is a timepiece, like the hourglass. But I guess these were often made with chicken eggs or eggs. Cut the egg in half and then flip it. Then, there's many interpretations here down in the comments of this. Some people call this the hand of God coming down above the peacock, turning the wheels of time. Of course, you have the rooster here. Now understand that if we take the interpretation that these are feathered serpents, then of course it makes sense, right? Because the Satan rules this world. He is the Chronos, the father of time in this reality, where we have limited time stuck in time loops, time cycles, all of that as a result of the fallen dimension that we're in. We're in the dimension of good and evil, where time, the sine wave, the sin wave, S-I-N, rules, right? Once we escape from this dimension, we go into eternity, where there are no time limits. But look at this. This is crazy. Now, there's lots of interpretations down here. I guess we don't really need to get into those. I'll link this. You could read this for yourself. But understand, a lot of this is pagan interpretation. A lot of this is New Age interpretation, which I don't buy into. To me, what this is showing is that the serpent does rule time. But God has his hand in it. And and once, time is up, God can stop the wheel. That's what I believe this is really saying here. Now, what else do we have before we get into this montage? Now, how does all this fit into the final episodes of Manifest, the TV series? Well, the scientists find a piece of driftwood, believed to be from Noah's Ark. And inside of the driftwood, they find peacock DNA, as well as sapphire. Now, remember, humanity's DNA was narrowed down to just 8 people when Noah got on the ark and passed through the flood. Now that we know that the peacock is the symbol of the fallen ones mixing back with humanity, many of you will remember the historical timeline that we had discovered. Here it is right here with the rainbow. So in effect, what you're looking at here is the peacock. See this? You are looking at the rainbow and all of the colors of the peacock. Now you understand what this Nostradamus plate could mean. All of the world history is enclosed in the rainbow. And so now this peacock, this is all the colors of the rainbow over the history of the world. Wow. Now, for those of you that didn't tune into this historic show here, understand that we overlaid the colors of the rainbow in order over biblical world history, and that the word Odem, O-D-E-M, means red in Hebrew, and that's what Adam was named after. So history started with Adam being red in the red spectrum, moving on to the yellow, which became Noah. We explained why that was, so we're not going to go into detail. And then that went to Abraham, which became the green. This was like the spring of the generations of God. 14, 14, and 14 generations spanned 2,000 years. Jesus mentioned those 14, 14, and 14 generations. Jesus ends up over here. And then now we are in the purple rain. Wow. Now, what else do we have here? I'm convinced we're on to something with this peacock and the rainbow. And back here, the fallen blood wants to mix with man. Red and blue make purple. That's back here. We're in the purple rain, the last part of the history of man. There were 2,000 years from this point in history back to Jesus. Then there was 2,000 years in the middle that Jesus described, and there was 2,000 years before that. Jesus' generations were right in the middle here. We're now in the last 2,000 years. 2021 to 2040 marks the 2,000 years after Jesus walked the earth. We are in the purple rain. Except the steel and watery clay is what the enemy is trying to mix together. The blue mixed with the red, the watery clay, humanity. This is why I stay far, far away from needles. That's the steel, the blue, trying to mix with the watery clay. Now, the Bible tells us that the two shall not cleave. That could mean a lot of things. It could mean that if you try to cleave it, bad things are going to happen. Or it could mean that their things won't work. Their devices won't work. Guess we're going to have to wait and see, right? Now, in the series Manifest, they believe that Noah passed through a portal. The same portal that causes the passengers to disappear and reappear. And they think this is because the passengers have a specific DNA marker. So there's your DNA aspect, the mixing of steel with water and clay, remember? And the passengers have this sapphire residue. And that they share that with the Noah's Ark piece of driftwood. Now, sapphire is interesting because it's mentioned in the Bible. It was on the devil's breastplate. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. This is in Ezekiel. And it mentions sapphire. But here is what else is interesting. Sapphire is the only stone mentioned in relationship to the firmament above. Sapphire is a sky blue type of stone. Is what we're seeing in the sky a reflection of the sapphire firmament? Now, here's the crazy thing about sapphire. It's mostly aluminum. Aluminum oxide with some impurities in it that actually cause it to have some very special features. Its hardness is just below that of diamonds. It's like the third hardest element or stone. And it's used in electronics. Now, there is a very rare form of sapphire called the star sapphire. And inside of this star sapphire, twins can appear. Can't make this up, you guys. This has been everything we've been talking about. Twins appear. Now, here is the largest star sapphire in the world. Weighs over 1/2 pound. It's called the Star of Adam. And it's got a 6-pointed star inside of it. Here are some pictures of it. This is the Star of Adam. The largest in the world, over 1/2 pound. And when they look at this thing, it's got this 6-pointed star inside. Now, there's something else about sapphire and peacocks that just blew me away. A little bit of simple research. They have coloration like a peacock that is called structural coloration. In other words, the color is not caused by pigment. It's caused by how light hits the surface. What are the odds of that? Look at the matrix here of the structural color of sapphire. So now we've got peacock feathers that have structural color. We were just talking about this the other day, you guys. And now we have sapphire having structural color. What is it to all this? Crystal structure of sapphire. Let's read a little bit about this. Unlike localized absorption of light, which causes color for chromium and vanadium impurities, blue color in sapphire comes from intervalence charge transfer, which is the transfer of an electron from one transition metal via conduction or valence band. There is no pigment. It's all on some kind of supernatural level. Just like the peacock. Now, I do believe that portals were opened during the flood. The waters from below came out of a portal. The hollow earth says in the Bible that water came up from the ground, from these springs. She came shooting forth. So imagine the volume of water that would have to take place. Where did it all come from? You guys, it's different from just water coming out of a spring, because spring water comes from rain that goes down into mountains and basically flows down and it appears as though it's coming out of the ground. That's something completely different than the waters of the flood and how they came out of the ground. We're talking volumes and volumes of water. Where did it come from? I believe it came from the hollow earth, from hell, and which was part of the punishment, right, of this fallen ones. So a portal was opened in order for that to happen. This was a supernatural event that God caused to happen. Now, other portals were open as well. The fallen ones were thrown into the earth to be imprisoned for 70 generations. So there's another portal that opened. And the book of Enoch talks about this. And it says that they are the ones, their evil spirits are the ones that cause the hot springs from inside the earth. They probably cause a lot of the tectonic and volcanic activity as well. The heat coming up out of the earth. This is what the book of Enoch says. Now, the book of Enoch says after the 70 generations, which we're right at right now. We covered that on this show when we were talking about this here. 70 generations. And basically, it says in the book of Enoch that at that point, when the fallen ones were basically resurrected to judgment, this would be the end of the world, 70 generations. And that it says that when the hot springs become cold, that we would know that they had been released for judgment. So there's another portal. And in fact, the fact that the fallen ones were actually able to come down from heaven, also remember, and take women, those are more portals that got open. Mount Hermon, the whole thing. But the question is, did Noah pass through a portal? Well, we know he was reborn. What do you mean, Casey? Oh, it rained 40 days and nights. That's the same number of weeks of the length of the gestation of a child in the womb. Rebirth. So same length of the wilderness, the 40 days and nights that Christ was in the wilderness. And the Israelites were in the wilderness for 40 years. There's something to that, going into something and coming back out. Rebirth. Now, I'm not going to speculate further on what exactly happened in Noah, but I can imagine that the ark was supernaturally protected by the Most High. Let's get into this montage here.
Your voice now that you're not going to fix me. Once I go on an event, I'm not going to come back.
Now, this episode aired. The gall of these people. This episode of Manifest aired here.
Your voice now that you're not going to fix me. Once I go on an event, I'm not going to come back.
Now, this episode aired. The gall of these people. This episode of Manifest aired after CV19 started, yet you heard her say with her own words, once you go on an event, you never come back. I'm going to play that again. Unbelievable.
Your voice now that you're not going to fix me. Once I go on an event, I'm not going to come back.
Zombie, you have to let her do whatever she can to save you right now.
Now, let's keep watching.
Yeah. Next thing you know, they'll have us on a registry. How's that even legal? We're talking about the same country that's keeping migrants in cages as we speak.
Now, these guys are sitting chatting it up. These guys are passengers. There were 191 passengers. And I believe this is going to be all of us who don't take the mark. Will be put on registries, tracked. They're going to say it's for health reasons. They're going to say, oh, it's because we got to make sure it's for health reasons.
This is how it starts. No fly list, fingerprints. We've got our DNA too. Legal means nothing when national security's invoked.
So no fly list, which we could be put on if you don't have the sticker. You know, they're already, bandying that about, talking about it. We're just one step away from that happening. They just have to get enough people with a sticker to where they can bully the rest of us and just strip all of the rest of our rights.
All of this is beyond our control. The end of times is nearing.
Now that's cryptic because that's exactly what we found on this rainbow timeline, right?
I like you better quiet.
We identified curious genetic markers in both you and the control group of deceased returnees.
If you're referring to the DNA anomaly.
It's a unique combination of iron, titanium, and multiple other components, but together they crystallize to form sapphire.
Wait, are you saying sapphire triggered our disappearance and return?
These are hypotheses.
We received a shipment from the Vatican.
What they sent?
It's a fossilized piece of driftwood.
Now, you heard all that. Remember, sapphire could be synonymous with the firmament. So to get out of the firmament, you would have to go through a portal, right? So this is what I believe what they're getting at here with this whole sapphire thing. Of course, the connection to Lucifer as well. But then they find this fossilized piece of driftwood from the Ark. Here it is right here. And this thing goes interdimensional. It can disappear and reappear. Let's keep listening here.
It may not look like much to the naked eye, but this piece of wood was the next crucial piece in a metaphysical puzzle stemming back millennia. Indeed, it may just be the key to unlocking not only why miracles happen, but how.
How is it possible that this peacock has the exact same DNA anomaly as every 828 passenger?
And what does that mean to you?
A seismic event on the day of our disappearance yielded a 6,000-year-old piece of extinct cypress, and there was only one dormant volcano in that region, Mount Ararat. Most likely a vessel transporting animals laden with sapphire, found near Mount Ararat, which is historically known for one thing. Mount Ararat is believed to be the final resting place of Noah's Ark. When the world finds out that Noah's Ark is real, when the passengers realize that this may be a precedent for what happened to us.
So, there you go. Hiding in plain sight. And we broke down this series. So understand that these are never just TV shows. This stuff is deep. Listen.
Although I counted 17 empty seats.
There were only 14 unoccupied seats on 828.
Flight crew used the jump seats.
So, there you heard it with your own ears. Now, I'm going to end the show with this amazing discovery by Dr. Savage. He's probably in the chat right now, but this ties it all in together for you. The Masonic Order of Quetzalcoatl. Freemasonic order here, colloquially known as the letter that shall not be named. You can't make this up. They were established way back in 1945. How did we all miss this? Now, this secret order, founded in Mexico on March 14th, 1945. It takes the name from the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, of course. And its chapters, called Teocallis Nahuatl, for House of God, are located in the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and Panama. All members of the order, called artisans, must be Shriners in good standing in their shrine temples. And it goes on and on and on. It talks about Aztec rituals, which we all know what the Aztec rituals were about. Hiding in plain sight. They have a ritual called a meeting called Feast of Fire. There's your FF66. Here are some images of the Order of Quetzalcoatl. Fun is the name of the game. Transportation is our aim. What? So now you know the truth. What are you going to do with it? Well, there's nothing to really do except not to participate in their lies. Anything coming from the top down is probably a lie that is going to affect you negatively. Live your life. Live your life according to the Bible, not what man tells you to do. Ooh, look at this. The Order of Quetzalcoatl PDF. And look, there are the monkeys. Do you think this could have something to do with the Planet of the Apes? Everything we've been covering. Now, we'll be back on here Monday with something I could not believe with my eyes. We're going to break down this music video by Ed Sheeran called Bad Habits. It's all about vampires and smiley face balloons.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome.